Hi guys, welcome back to Code Master Coach, your medical coding tutor. Today we're in CPT and we're talking about editorial notations. Editorial notations. Guys, these are things just like with last video on CPT where I talked about, I kind of introduced you to the book CPT. Well, today I want to introduce you to editorial notations because these are things that we take for granted. But as a coder, we need to know what editorial notations are. They're kind of like the conventions in ICD-10-CM. Editorial notations are a symbol or a sign to the coder that something about a particular code is different from other codes in the book. When you see a symbol, you need to take care in using that code. If I were to list off the top, the 9 editorial notations or symbols in CPT, they're the bullet, the triangle, the double inverted triangles, a plus sign, an exempt symbol. It's a lightning that's for pending FDA approval, telemedicine, out of numeric sequence symbol, and a symbol for the reference to CPT Assistant and CPT Change book. So now let's discuss each notation so that you may understand why each is so important from a coder perspective. And remember, each one of these can be found. Your CPT book, if you open your cover and right on the hard cover, right behind it, on the cover of your CPT book, you will see a listing of your editorial notations. Now that just tells you the editorial notations, but it doesn't tell you what each one of the symbols mean. When you see a bullet, the bullet precedes the code, and it means that the code and its description are new to the code book or the CPT book for that year. And I gave you an example of code 22867. When you look at it, there's a bullet in front of it. The bullet appears for only 1 year, and it may be found in any section of CPT. They denote that the procedure before which they appear is a new procedure for that year. The bullet is important because it's a signal to the coder that the code was not found in the book the previous year. You should take special note because this code might be one that you needed in the past and can now begin to use effective on the first day of the calendar year. The next symbol is the triangle. The triangle precedes the codes, and it means that the description of the code has changed since last year. And I gave you an example of a code 31615. There's a triangle in front. And I'm asking you on this lesson plan to check your book. Look at code 31615. Like bullets, triangles appear only for 1 year and can be found in any section of the CPT book. And they denote that the procedure before which they appear has been revised or changed in some way in this new volume of CPT. The triangle is important because it signals the coder that something has been revised or deleted from the description of the procedure and that the code description this year differs from last year's code description. Although the difference may not appear great at first, the impact on reimbursement could be significant. You should compare the code that have changed in the current version of CPT to those listed in the previous years. Many times when you see the description of the code that the code has changed, the reimbursement may also be affected. Okay. The next symbol is the inverted triangles. These are 2 triangles that are facing each other. The inverted triangle shows the coder that some text other than the actual description of the code has been added or changed. And the code example that I give is look at code 52601. Note that one inverted triangle comes before the phrase and the other comes at the end of the phrase. So on code 52601, you'll see an opening triangle saying for transurethral water jet ablation of the prostate, use this other code, and at the end of that statement there's the other triangle. The inverted triangle will only appear before and after the verbiage for 1 year, and it can be found anywhere in the CPT book as well. Next, you have your plus sign. Codes that have the plus sign are known as add-on codes. You will find some services in CPT that take into account more parts or another service. For example, and I love this code, code 11200. And then the next code has a plus sign in front of it, 11201. So as you can see, the 11201 describes each additional 10 lesions, and this code needs to be listed in addition to the code 11200. For example, 20 lesions were removed by the physician. Add-on codes let the coder know that if you are trying to describe the greater extent of the service, for example, that there were more parts than that you coded or described in the original service, then you will need both codes, maybe even more depending on the service, to describe the entire procedure. Add-on codes are additional or supplemental procedures that are added onto the original service if additional services are performed at the same time as the initial service. These can be readily identified in the description of the code because the description uses words like each additional or list separately in addition to the primary procedure. Add-on code concept applies only to procedures performed by the same physician. For example, if one doctor performed removal of skin tags with the code 11200 and removed 15 lesions, and another doctor removed an additional 10, each doctor would use code 11200 to account for their services. Note that even though a total of 25 lesions were removed from the patient, the second 10 lesions were removed by a different physician. Therefore, we're not subject to the add-on concept. Okay? Add-on codes do not require the use of the multiple procedure modifier 51. Carriers already know that the very nature of these codes, these add-on codes, and thus the multiple service modifier, which is the 51, is not needed. But remember, with an add-on code, it's just that when you see a plus with that code, there needs to be a first listed code, and then that add-on code cannot be used by itself. The exempt symbol in CPT specifically relates to the fact that codes found with this notation do not require the use of the multiple procedure modifier 51. An example is code 44500. These codes appear to be linked to other larger, more global services, and the fact that they would be performed at the same time, making them multiple, is routine. So use of the modifier 51 for multiple procedures would therefore be somewhat redundant. It's already understood, okay, with these codes. Now those ones pending FDA approval, this symbol, which is, it looks like a lightning bolt, when placed to the left of a code, indicates that the code and its description are waiting for the approval for use by the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration. An example of this code is code 90666. And in actuality, with these codes, even though they're pending FDA approval, check with your third-party carrier. A lot of times they are still, even though they're pending FDA approval, your third-party carrier will accept these. All right, the next symbol is the reference to the CPT Assistant Monthly Newsletter and or CPT Changes. It's called an Insider's View annual publication, and or the quarterly newspaper or newsletter Clinical Example in Radiology. These are CPT resources that help you with your coding. They're kind of like newsletters or coding clinics that we have for ICD-10. This notation can be found in the professional CPT code book, the one with the spiral bound, in both red and green. So you see them in these. Now that symbol will be both red and green, and it's located in and around the codes to which it applies. And it makes reference to prior editions of either of these 3 publications where the coder can obtain greater insight about these and the codes and their notations. And this notation will appear for a year after it's been applied to the book. Now in the regular standard version of CPT, these notations will simply be black. In the spiral or professional version, they're green. That indicates the reference to the CPT Assistant, which is a monthly newsletter, and or CPT Change. And then in the spiral professional version of CPT, the red notation indicates a reference to the quarterly newsletter. Okay? Do not worry about memorizing which color is which, because the book always cites, following the notation, exactly which reference to go to. So sometimes we have CCs in our ICD-10 that tell you to refer to the coding clinic CC. Well, in this case, when you see the red, green, or black arrow, it's telling you to refer to and it's these three newsletters. Introduction of CPT gives a thorough reference to the AMA resources along with further description of the notation. So make sure you look at your introduction that follows the cover of your CPT book. There's an introduction to CPT, and if you read in there, it gives you a little more detail about those that symbol. The out of numeric sequence symbol, which is a number symbol, is used to identify codes that are listed out of numerical sequence. Remember, I mentioned this in my last video. Resequence codes that are not placed numerically are identified with the number symbol, and a reference placed numerically, i.e. the code is out of numerical sequence, and it tells you C, and it'll tell you where to go to find the code, as a navigation alert to direct the user or the coder where to locate the out of sequence code. Resequencing is utilized to allow placement of related concepts in appropriate location within the families of codes, regardless of the availability of numbers for sequential numerical placement. All I'm saying, guys, is if it pertains to the stomach, even though it's, I told you in the last video, even though it's endoscopic, it's coming down in the esophagus, if it applies to the stomach, if it's up here in this sequence of numbers, they'll move it down here in this sequence of family. Even though the number matches this family, the number, it'll be placed down here. And an example of that code would be 43212. It's out of place. And so when you get a chance, look at that code 43212 and see how it's resequenced. Then you have your star symbol, which is the telemedicine symbol. This star symbol is used to identify codes that may be used to report telemedicine services when appended by modifier 95. These CPT codes may be used for reporting synchronous or real-time telemedicine services. These procedures involve electronic communication using interactive telecommunication equipment that includes, at a minimum, audio and video services. An example of this code would be code 98960. And I usually see this type of interaction with psychiatric patients and their psychiatrists, because the psychiatrist is not in the hospital. They tend to communicate with the patient through video and audio equipment. Okay? Okay, guys, this information that I had to make sure to cover before we dive into CPT. Make sure you are subscribed to my channel so that you don't miss any upcoming videos. I'll be covering E&M section of CPT in my next CPT video. So stay tuned. I know you guys are waiting on that. Alright guys, that's it. Don't forget to view my second channel, Medical Coder Life, where I discuss a day in the life of a medical coder, so that you can see exactly what types of equipment, what type of attire, what type of wiring, and even as I interview fellow coders in the industry so that you can see what a coding life is like. All right, thanks guys. I'll see you in the next one.